Welcome, you're officially locked into Persuasions of Comfort. I am your host, Naum. I want to give a big shout out to all the listeners out there who've been tuning in since day one. The love and support is 100% greatly appreciated. Let's get it. The topic of discussion for today revolves around understanding when to pivot. This is the third episode in the series of the art of pivot. There's a difference between something being hard and something being wrong. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't taking the leap. It's knowing when it's time to take that leap. Have you ever asked yourself why you stay in situations longer than you should? What was your excuse? I believe I do so because I don't want to confuse difficulty with misalignment. What do I mean by that? Let me break this down. When you're doing something hard, like learning a skill or working at a job or even staying in a relationship, it's normal to struggle, right? Because hard things can make you grow. Sometimes the reason something feels hard isn't because you're growing. It's because it is no longer right for you in that moment or right for you at all. So the real challenge isn't just being brave enough to make a change. It's knowing when that change is actually needed. We often stay in situations longer than we should because we don't want to give up too soon or be seen as someone who quits. So we tell ourselves, maybe this is just one of those moments where I need to push harder. Or maybe this is a tough season and eventually it will pass. And sometimes that's true. Real facts. Other times, the tough season is just a signal, not a test. It's life's way of saying you've outgrown this pond that you're swimming in. Okay, maybe that made no sense. Think of it this way. You're wearing a pair of shoes, and it's one size too small. But you keep walking anyway. It'll hurt the longer you keep going. You know that. Big facts. And in the back of your mind, you know that the pain isn't there to punish you. It's there to tell you that it's time for a better fit. But you're not going to do so because it's your favorite pair of shoes. So when I say that, for me, I don't want to confuse difficulty with misalignment. What I mean by this is that the real difficulty isn't the act of changing. It's sometimes recognizing that staying is what's holding you back. So how do you know when to keep pushing versus when to pivot? That's what I want to unpack in this episode today. Let's talk about discomfort and misalignment for a second. Not every struggle means you're in the wrong place. It is understandable that some pressures build strength, other pressure breaks spirit. You have to learn to discern the differences between the two. You can't just sit there playing Russian roulette with your life when you should be playing strategically to win every game that you enter. If you don't know how you're going to win, why are you playing? If the challenge is developing your character, that's growth. If it's diminishing your clarity, creativity, and peace, that's what I call misalignment. Growth stretches you while misalignment drains you. One expands capacity, the other slowly empties it. The other day, I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and she asked, why do people say the devil is in the details? We discussed the different interpretations of this phrase and how one could perceive the meaning of the phrase. For me, whenever I hear this phrase, I'm thinking that someone is looking to make a decision, right? And whenever decisions are being made, they're first made with emotion, and then we justify it with logic. I was trying to understand this concept, why we always make decisions with emotion first and then justify it with logic. And then the two words that came to mind was strategy and alignment. Right? If you're making a decision, does it actually make sense? And then does it align with who you are? But I wanted to go a little bit deeper with this main concept. Strategic timing isn't just logic. It's alignment between data and discernment. Data shows you patterns, results, metrics, responses. And discernment shows you peace, internal cues, conviction, intuition. Anytime I'm making a decision, I need to use both. Relying on data only makes me reactive. A real life scenario would be the stock market. If a stock that you currently hold is dropping, naturally, one of your reactions would be to sell. If you only rely on emotion, that can make you unstable. A real life scenario could be getting bad news from a partner or getting let go from a job, and now that makes you emotionally unstable. But when your strategy and your alignment between the data and discernment start saying the same thing, that's when you know it's time to make a move. I realized that wisdom lives where information and intuition start to agree. Now let's talk about the cost of ignoring the signs. Every delayed decision accumulates interest. The longer you stay where you don't belong, the more expensive the lessons become. Not just emotionally, mentally, or physically, but also financially. Waiting for the perfect timing is often a way of us postponing accountability and responsibility. You don't need to have all the answers to pivot. And I'm talking to myself when I say this, because I might need to be settling down soon. But I feel like I need to be financially ready in order to do so. But like I was saying, you don't need to have all the answers to pivot. You just need to have enough clarity to take the next right step. One thing that I always keep in mind whenever I'm transitioning or going through a particular phase, I always look to make sure that peace is in the room. If peace keeps leaving the room, it's time to check to see if I've overstayed my welcome. Okay, story time. There was a point in my career where, or should I say when, I felt something shifting internally, but everything externally looked fine. On paper, again, I was doing great. Consistent clients, a solid income, a clear reputation. But internally, I was restless. I wasn't really happy. I wasn't satisfied. I was unsettled. I kept asking, why does this no longer feel fulfilling? What is the motivation or the driver behind me being here in this space? It took me months to realize that the work wasn't wrong. It was the simple fact that the season that I was in was over. The space that I was swimming in was no longer conducive to my growth. When I finally accepted the truth, the decision to pivot was already made for me. Now I had to figure out how to make the gradual pivots that I needed in order to create new, fun growth opportunities for myself. And whenever you move outside of your comfort zone without actually feeling ready or prepared, it's challenging. It can be scary. But I couldn't have predicted that the transition was exactly what I needed. My only issue was I just didn't know when to take that leap. What I learned in that inflection point is that timing isn't just about stepping out of that comfort zone and leaving something behind. It's about listening. It's about understanding. And when you miss these cues and you start to ignore the quiet signs, life will eventually raise the volume. Just hoping that you are able to discern the signals in the noise. Peace doesn't always announce when it's time to go, but it will always whisper when it's time to listen. So here are some reflection questions, some takeaways from this episode. Ask yourself, where in my life am I confusing being challenged with being called away from my purpose? What signals, whether internal or external, have I been ignoring? And lastly, if I trusted that timing is part of the strategy, what decision would I make or should have made sooner? The concept of these questions should help you understand that knowing when to pivot isn't about fear of staying. It's about faith in what's next for you. And if this episode inspires you in any way, share it with someone who's standing in the inflection point or the crossroads of pivoting from one thing to another. Sometimes the confirmation you're waiting for is clarity in conversation. Next up, why pivoting is essential for growth. I will explore how every shift, even the uncomfortable ones, is part of your evolution, not evidence of inconsistency or failure. Because when you understand the why, every pivot becomes more purposeful. I am your host. Till next time, Naum.